from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up on AgDay, fresh reports from USDA help set direction for markets this harvest. We'll get analysis from the combine, plus updates on cotton harvest and crop conditions. And agribusiness looking at livestock.
We've been marketing cattle at a phenomenal place.
Farm Journal College TV is teaching on white mold in soybeans. And can America bridge the digital divide?
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Corn and soybean prices rally into the green following USDA's October supply-demand reports. In that October crop production report, the Ag Department boosting corn production by 1% from its September forecast. USDA now expecting corn production to hit 14.3 billion bushels based on a national average yield of 171.8 bushels to the acre. That's a 1.9 bushel increase from the September forecast. Now harvested acreage sits at 83.1 million acres, down less than 1%. Soybean production, it was trimmed from September. USDA now projecting 4.43 billion bushels. That's down slightly from September, but still a record-sized crop. USDA pegging the national average yield at 49.5 bushels to the acre, down 0.4 bushels. Harvested acreage for soybeans sits at a record 89.5 million acres.
With the negative report for corn and the bullish report for soybeans. And what happened is the soybean market exploded higher and pulled corn up as well. So now we have the corn market that's sitting here just off its contract highs, which it posted ahead of the reports, and the soybean market, which is now posting a potential upside breakout from the recent consolidation range. And we have those converging forces to see which one will win out.
Market analysts pouring through the numbers Thursday, looking for indicators of price direction. Well, Matt Bennett of Bennett Consulting pulling double duty, harvesting corn while sifting through the report on Thursday.
Obviously, you're throwing several additional acres, a little bit less yield, and you have essentially the same size crop you had before, whereas a large part of the trade was probably concerned that we were going to end up substantially higher on total production today than where we came in at due to the lower yield.
Bennett says just as he's seeing on his farm, early season yields are more impressive than his later planted crops, which could show up in that November report. But as the corn crop gets bigger, Joe Vaklovic of Standard Grain says USDA also slightly adjusting the demand picture.
USDA upped their corn feed number a little bit, which is to be expected when you've got really cheap prices. Corn exports weren't touched. On the soybean side, I don't think we saw any major adjustments there. So for new crop, no, I mean, we've still got a pretty lofty soybean demand projection punched in there for exports, especially for corn. It's kind of the status quo here still. So, I mean, all in all, yeah, demand's strong. We'd like to see better corn demand, and we've just got to hope that we hit the demand targets for soybeans, I think. We've
been talking this week about orange and citrus production in Florida following Hurricane Irma. USDA says Florida's all-orange forecast is 54 million boxes, down 21% from last year. Early, mid-season, and navel varieties, they were down 30%. Well, Thursday's estimates show a big disparity between USDA's Florida numbers and Florida Department of Agriculture's numbers, which put their estimate at 31 million boxes. Florida Commissioner of Agriculture Adam Putnam releasing a statement saying, quote, Hurricane Irma's path could not have been more lethal to Florida citrus. I am concerned that today's forecast does not accurately estimate the damages to our industry. He says damage estimates are still unfolding. Meanwhile, look at cotton expectations following hurricane damage across the South. The all-cotton forecast now at 21.1 million bales. That's down 3% from September, but still up 23% from last year. Now, this report says hurricane issues in Texas and Georgia reduced production by 643,000 bales. The average yield lowered by 19 pounds per bale to an average of 889 pounds per harvested acre, but still, that's near record highs. USDA says if realized, the cotton yield for the nation will be the second highest ever. The Texas cotton that was spared the wrath of Hurricane Harvey is still struggling to finish out the season. Agronomists from Texas A&M AgriLife Extension saying poor weather conditions in the rolling and high plains areas could mean subpar cotton yields for many producers in the state's fiber region. Late season cool and cloudy spells denied cotton fields adequate heat units for plants to reach their full potential. A&M says the combination of high temperatures and sunny days have been few and far between since August. Louisiana cotton farmers are now in the midst of their harvest. They're finding out that a growing season filled with rain, diseases, and insects is taking a real bite out of the crop. LSU Ag Center's Craig Gautreaux has his story.
Louisiana cotton producers are nearly halfway through their harvest, and a season that started out with promise and optimism is slowly turning into disappointment. According to LSU Ag Center cotton specialist Dan Fromme, farmers increased acreage by nearly 50% from last year, but a wet growing season has reduced yields in many parts of the state.
A lot of them, they're kind of disgusted, so I think we might actually see acres drop off next year, especially here in central Louisiana.
Cotton is no longer king in Louisiana. Acreage has decreased from nearly 1 million acres 15 years ago to this year's crop of approximately 215,000 acres. The main reason for the reduction is depressed prices.
Prices are in that 60 cents, 60 to 70 cent area, at this time, which we need a lot more than that to be profitable.
While the statewide pounds per acre yield will be similar to recent years, those previous crops also suffered from unfavorable growing conditions.
I think we'll probably be in that, 850 to 925 pounds a lint, which has kind of been where we've been for the last 2 or 3 years now.
While Tropical Storm Harvey did contribute to lower yields, Fromme believes yields were already suffering from wet weather, insects, and diseases.
We were already wet at that time, so it's kind of hard to put a number on it. How much damage did Harvey do? I think we were damaged before that.
Fromme expects farmers to complete their harvest by the beginning of November. With the LSU Ag Center, this is Craig Gautreaux reporting.
Cindy Clausen in for meteorologist Mike Hoffman again this week. She continues our look at crop conditions in today's crop comments. Cindy?
Good morning, Clinton. We'll start off in New England. NASA says the region has witnessed unseasonably warm weather and a lack of rain. In Aroostook County, Maine, potato harvest moved along quickly last week. Many operations have finished, others have a day or two left. And in Colorado, crop reporters in the San Luis Valley noted that potato harvest progressed well around adverse weather events, but a lot of hay is still down, waiting to dry out. 70% is harvested, which is just a couple points behind the 5-year average. Coming up in just a few minutes, we're going to take a look at the latest U.S. drought monitor. Some improvement, but some areas to watch. But for now, here are some hometown temps.
This is Machinery Pete, inviting you to check out my new website, machinerypete.com, offering farmers tens of thousands of used equipment listings to search. Let Machinery Pete help you find and value your next piece of used equipment.
We'll switch from grains to livestock coming up next, including a look at cattle markets and expectations in the next few weeks. And later, looking at white mold. Missy Bauer takes an in-depth look at the issue in soybeans on Farm Journal College TV.
Unlock the power of ag technology this December in Indianapolis at the first ever Ag Tech Expo. Learn all about it at farmjournalagtech.com.
In agribusiness, let's see how USDA's reports impacted the market. For that, we head to the floor of the CME in Chicago.
We got a bearish report, but the market went higher, and I think a lot of this was on the back of short covering. We know that funds have established a relatively good size net short, and so we saw some short covering into that on the back of strength from soybeans. 171.8 was the yield estimate, with production right at about 14.2 billion bushels. Now, speaking of the bean market, beans are the main driver here in this afternoon's grain trade, as the yield expectations were lowered slightly, 49.5 bushels an acre. This is kind of towards the low end of estimates. We broke out above technical resistance that was at 977. That's going to become support. If we can continue to close above this to round out the week, I think there's more upside here. A close above 993.5 really opens the door towards 1014. That's what we're looking at to round out the week. That's what you should be looking at too. This has been Oliver Slope with Blue Line Futures from the floor of the CME.
Cattle futures remain under a watchful eye as 2017 gets closer to completion. Tyne Morgan has more and analysis from the road.
Here now with Craig Van Dyke of Top Third. Craig, let's focus on this cattle market. I mean, we continue to see this impressive herd size, yet prices have held up fairly well. I mean, does that surprise you?
Yeah, demand has been decent. We've been marketing cattle at a phenomenal place. Now, placements have been huge all year long. As we continue to move in the fall, October, November, seasonally, we should see placements continue to grow. So I don't think it's a huge surprise that we're placing a lot of cattle, but if it wasn't for the marketings and the pace we're killing cattle, I think we'd be in a lot more trouble than some might think we are now. Ultimately, when you look at the spreads, front month cattle, to me it's fairly fair valued right now. My concern is back month fat cattle, and if that breaks, how that'll lead into feeders being under pressure.
So you talk pressure. Do you see some downside risk in this market?
As far as the feeder cattle market goes, we're up at the top of the range. All commodities have seemed to be somewhat range bound over the past year. So as far as the feeder market goes, if the fat cattle spreads start to turn and back month fats start to weaken, I think you see some weakness in the feeder market. And I think maybe we're potentially leaning towards a little of that towards the end of the year.
You do, yet this year. But when you look at the technical side, you mentioned the spreads. What are you watching with the spreads right now?
Right now, when you look at how wide the AgDay's fat cattle spread is, seasonally, and we're coming into first notice day this next week, seasonally, that spread should start to narrow up. My concern is that spread will start to break the back month fats. Once back month fats start to come under some pressure, then feeders are next on the line.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that. Craig Van Dyke, thanks so much. Stay with us. We'll have much more AgDay when we come back.
For a special report on the grain markets, call toll-free at 877-TT-HEDGE. That's 877-884-3343. AgDay, brought to you by the Enlist Weed Control System. More weed control, less drift and volatility, maximum yield potential. AgDay weather, brought to you by Kawasaki and the new Mule Pro FXR side-by-side. Ride like a boss with high-end styling and rugged capability.
Welcome back to AgDay. Here with Cindy Clausen. Cindy, it seems like feast or famine with these rains and droughts, and it dries out and then we get a bunch of rain, and it kind of just depends on what part of the country you're in.
It really is, and wouldn't it be nice if we could just move it around to where it's needed and then take it away from the areas that are too wet, but unfortunately we can't do that. Let's take a look. And we have good news and bad news when it comes to the drought monitor, because we have good news up in these areas in the northern plains where we're seeing improvement. But the bad news is that we're seeing this dryness continuing to spread to the east. Let's take a look over the last 4 weeks. You can see how bad it's been, especially in Montana. But as you see this move into the next few weeks, you can see the drought kind of dwindling in some of those northern plains. But you can see how we are starting to see pockets of dryness in much of the Corn Belt and now spreading even further into the eastern part of the United States. All right, let's take a look at what we expect over the next 24 hours. We have a frontal boundary that's going to be affecting parts of the mid-Atlantic and the southeast. We've got a front that's going to be moving through the nation's midsection, and that'll be one that we'll have to watch, especially as we get a little bit further to the east, pick up some more moisture. So especially Friday night, we're going to really start to see this kind of light up with some more rain. And we're going to see that low pressure system starting to move to the north. Eventually, the whole thing is going to pull to the north this weekend, and that's going to mean some wet weather for a lot of the Corn Belt. Out in the Pacific Northwest and into the northern Rockies, it's going to be some rain and upper elevation snow. Here's Saturday as we head through the day, and watch how that low pressure system heads up towards the Great Lakes. We're going to see that rain really starting to expand as we get into Saturday evening, and eventually we're going to see some eastward push with that whole system. Here's the past 24 hours, and when you add on the next 24 hours, it's really over into the northwest, and you can start to see the rain starting to build along that front, and it could be heavy in some spots, especially over in the southern Great Lakes. Heading into your temperatures and or snowfall, you can see there we are expecting some snowfall in those higher elevations in the northwestern United States. All right, here's a look at temperatures, and we are expecting a lot of 50s and 60s across the northern tier of states. Pretty warm, though, in the south, 80s and even in some cases 90s right around Dallas. Now, as we head into the overnight, we're going to be seeing some 40s and 50s, even some 30s over towards Billings, 60s and 70s continuing in the south. But watch what happens as we see even colder air building in to the parts of the northwest, and we see some warmer air starting to build back into the east. That's a look at your national forecast. Now let's check out some local cities. Quartzsite, Arizona, sunny and warm for you today with a high of 89 degrees. Granite City, Illinois, mostly sunny and warmer with a high of 83. And Sandstone, West Virginia, mostly cloudy, a slight chance for showers early in the day with a high of 73.
We'll be talking agronomy and white mold and soybeans next on Farm Journal College TV. And later, leaping across that digital divide, can rural America join the information age?
AgDay, brought to you by Alivo Seed Treatment from Bayer. Protect your soybeans from SDS and nematodes this season. Farm Journal College TV is brought to you by Instinct and N-Serve. Maximize every nitrogen application so your crops deliver the max in return. Learn more at maxinmaxout.com.
While we continue to hear reports of solid soybean yields, we've also heard a fair amount of white mold is out in fields. Field agronomist Missy Bauer has more on Farm Journal College TV.
Now, white mold is a fungus, and it survives in the soil as a sclerotinia, and that'll overwinter, actually can survive in the soil for many years. There's been documented cases over 7 years that it can stay in the soil.
Okay.
So that sclerotinia then will germinate, and under the right conditions, it'll have spores produced, and then it can infect the soybean plants. So this infection is going to take place during flowering.
Okay.
So we get those cool, humid, moist conditions during flowering. That's going to be much more apt to have the infection take place. This time of the year, you're looking for these laid over plants that are real bleached out like this. So you can see this particular plant here is all bleached out on the stem. That's a good indication that this plant's been infected with the white mold. You can actually see some spots here on the stem itself where there's actually the white mold on the outside. I can actually kind of scrape that off a little bit, but you can see where that's been infected. Another good way to take a look at it is actually to split stems open. So when you split stems open, one of the things you want to look for this time of the year are the sclerotinia. And you can actually see them in here inside the stem, and you'll actually even see them here on the outside of the pods. So for controlling it, it has to be a preventative. So there are some fungicides on the market now that got some control over white mold. There's also some biologicals on the market that you'd put down before planting or even the fall before that would help as well. And there's some herbicides that can have an effect as well, really trying to just manage the growth of the beans.
Okay.
But one thing you can definitely do is pay attention to your field history. Because that will survive in the soil for so long, your field history has a big impact. So if you know you've got a history of white mold, you need to be pretty proactive with the varieties that you select.
One nation and internet service for all. We'll look at what it means for rural areas after the break.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Discover the power behind the M6 series at Kubota.com or visit your local Kubota dealer today.
While our friends in the city enjoy their gigabit internet and planning watch parties for the new season of Stranger Things on Netflix, in rural America, download speeds and internet options are downright frustrating. And while you may have a great connection in Illinois, rural parts of Montana or New Mexico, those options might be limited. It's DSL through your phone line, a wireless line-of-sight dish, cellular data, or satellite internet. And while that may get you online, you've got mail. It's likely to be slow, spotty, limited, or expensive, and many times it's all four. So why does it matter? Well, 34 million people is why. According to the Federal Communications Commission, that's the number in the U.S. who still don't have broadband internet access, defined as having download speeds of 25 megabits per second. Now, 40% of those people live in rural America. Compare that to just 4% of urban Americans who struggle with broadband access. And while the reason is population density, it's still a lot of people, and the lack or barrier to access is hurting businesses, healthcare, and education. Only a third of rural high school students have access to a computer science class, and yet these are the skills of the future. From the combine to spreadsheets, purchasing, sales, computers, and internet access help to drive modern-day agriculture in rural America. And it's pretty hard to sell that pallet furniture on your Etsy page without a good connection. Now, there is hope. This issue is getting attention. Microsoft and other tech companies are pledging to connect the corners of rural America in the coming years. The FCC and USDA both are offering money and grants to help foot the bill for infrastructure. Small towns, county commissioners, and co-ops, well, they're putting forth money and proposals themselves. Politicians tell us, hey, we're on your screen.
But we must do more to ensure that the benefits of the information revolution flow to every American.
And of course, others on both sides have said the same through the years. We'll see. We'll see if the information age finally makes its way down America's dirt roads. Of course, our future depends on it. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in and started your day with us. For Cindy Clausen and all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.
AgDay, brought to you by Ram Commercial, America's longest-lasting heavy-duty pickups.